Hey everybody, how's it going? Have another knife review for you today, and what do we have here? Something that was on my grail list of knives to own at some point in my life, and I'm finally able to show you this knife. This is the Sigil Marfione and Munroe collaboration, you could say. Of the Sigil knife. Sigil, however you want to say it. Marfione Custom Knives. Tony Marfione. He teamed up and used Munroe's Sigil design. And this is what they ended up with. As you could imagine, real fancy packaging and everything. This is one of the actual knives from Blade Show 2015. That came out of there, so very limited, and the first run of these knives that they released. I mean, this really nice package, container, whatever. It's like Velcro right here was stitched, their logo, you know, and like this little lanyard steel logo and the signature. They really go all out on their packaging. And then look at this. That's one hell of a certificate of authenticity. They have the makers, which is really cool, Deryk Munroe, and then his logo, and then Tony Marfione and his logo. Certificate of authenticity. This is titanium, I believe. Actually, do I have a magnet out here? I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just steel. Signed in 24 karat gold. I have no idea, I'm just kidding. Blade, satin finish. There's actually multiple finishes, I'll show you. Kauri Y blade steel. That stuff's insane, by the way. They've released quite a few other versions of these knives since then, and they're not as cool as this, and they also use LMAX, which is great, but it's definitely not Kauri Y quality. Date of birth 5/2015. Carbon fiber with copper hardware. They use a beryllium copper. Serial number not applicable because these are all custom, fully custom. Okay. Are you expecting like rays of light to pour out of this as I unzip it? I kind of was when I first opened it. There's some like carpeting in here. And this too is like a copper metal that's velcroed on right here. And then we have this pouch right here, microfiber pouch, nothing else in there. Okay. All right. So, get some of this stuff out of the way here. All right. So what people might not realize, first of all, is that this knife isn't that big. A lot of these close-up pictures, because it has so much going on, might make it look a little bit bigger than it really is. It's a small knife. It's a great everyday carry knife if you're looking for something, you know, super expensive and high-end and custom and exclusive and rare, that you could, you know, carry comfortably every day. It's very lightweight. What does this weigh in at? Yeah, so like 3 ounces. So very, very lightweight, especially considering it has a very thick blade stock and a 3.5 inch blade. Okay, so first of all, this is, I believe, like the 3rd gen, if you will. You can kind of look at it that way, from the Sigil's evolution, the Sigil. They've had a couple, you know, it evolved with Deryk Munroe. He's got a pretty exclusive and strong, almost cult following. As soon as I saw his designs, I really kind of thought it was you know, some of the most appealing knife designs I'd ever seen, just for, you know, my tastes. And what I really liked about it was that, you know, it was custom and it was really unique, and I really hadn't seen anything he had ever done, anyone else do anything like that. But I never handled one, never really had the opportunity to get one. And then I saw, just coincidentally on his Instagram, you know, pictures of this collaboration, and I'm like, holy crap, this looks, you know, this is the coolest knife he's made yet. And then I found out it was the collaboration with him and Marfione, and I was like, okay, sounds like I might be able to actually get my hands on one of these. And so, you know, I was kind of just walking around like a stalker, just trying to pick one up. And as soon as I saw it available, I definitely jumped on it. So what are we looking at here? We are looking at, like I mentioned before, a 3.5-inch blade with a lot going on. You have a hand satin rub on the hollow grind portion. You have a really cool machine, like a peppered satin. It's really cool looking. Let's see if I can pick it up. You can kind of see that there, I think. Yeah, on the flats there. It looks really nice. And then you have a matte bead blasted portion right here on the swedge. Right? Again, that peppered satin machine look on the spine. And then again, that bead blasted portion. Now, the bead blasted portion on the swedge there is also on the insides of this cutout here in the blade. Okay, and it's also on pretty much any place where you feel like you'd want a little extra traction. This is all bead blasted, maybe around here by the jimping on the flipper tab. And you'll also see it back here, and of course not on the tang where the lock engages, but pretty much everywhere else. Pretty cool. You'll also see in here it's skeletonized here as well as on the flipper. Pretty cool. They did, because this is a small finger choil, they dulled the edge right here and blunted it off, so that way if you did want to choke up on this, you could do so without cutting yourself, even though you're technically on the actual blade edge. I think it looks great with the design, but I would never actually use that choil. I never do on any of my knives. I actually like that it's so small because I never use it. Otherwise, if it was larger, I'd be pissed that they took away extra blade edge. You know, you could sharpen this all the way down to the base if you really wanted to. So yeah, lots of different finishes on the blade itself, which gives it a lot of depth and dimension. A lot of very angular, you know, this initial angle transitions here, transitions again. It's almost a mechanical sort of sheep's foot. It's pretty awesome. Maybe it's even more of a Warncliffe. Pretty awesome blade design, really appeals to me, but you know, no belly, just a flat razor blade sort of edge. Comes fairly sharp. I wonder if I have any paper I can show you here. So, decent. Definitely not impressive as far as sharpness goes, but you know, the finishing work most certainly is. I often find that on custom knives that have a lot of crazy finishes going on and it looks really nice on the blade, that I feel like they do things in the wrong order, at least in my opinion, because it almost always compromises the edge. There's many times where I send a custom knife back, you know, I have like a mirror finish, it's something crazy, and I'm like, yeah, but it's dull. And I think that a lot of these guys are like, well, I didn't think you were going to cut with it, you know, like I thought this was going to be up on your fireplace mantle with like spotlights on it. But I'm one of those crazy assholes. Oh yeah, I want to use my knife. I want to cut with it. But yeah, these I've talked to a few people, and they're usually pretty dull, or at least they're not real sharp. So I don't know if I want to call them dull. They, instead of having the Munroe hardware, it's a kind of a Microtech sort of collaboration too. So you have Microtech hardware, their proprietary hardware on all of the beryllium copper. Beryllium copper, from my understanding, is just a type of copper that is stronger and that can be better used for hardware, more tensile strength. So I'm glad that I handled this a little bit. I'm glad and I'm not. I kind of like to show you what this knife looks like brand new out of the box, before I've tarnished the copper with the oils of my skin. And the more you handle this, the more this lightens up. And I'm telling you that when you first get this, or if you clean the copper, it's like a bright, vibrant orange. It's badass looking. It looks really, really good. And that's why I got it. I loved the orange tones with, the orange tones that you see with the heat anodization on this titanium subframe, or what do they call that? A subframe lock bar, something like that. Anyway, this lock bar attaches right here, this titanium piece, and it does have a steel lock bar insert. Pretty cool. Because of course you don't want titanium right there on the steel, so it's steel to steel, and it actually runs all the way down. See, all the way down here, so it's a big insert. I really like that. And they chamfered it off, and chamfered the carbon fiber. Look at all the machine work on this. Look at all the angles, the different steps and levels on this. It's fucking breathtaking. It's just stunning. All the machine work, the milling and everything. There's just so much going on. And I've seen so many versions. This was my favorite version just based on looks. Just the contrast with everything. Again, it looked even better when the copper was all really, really bright. But man, this looks great. The kind of like a floating backspacer here, again has the same copper lanyard hole, a little bit of jimping right there. And you're not going to be able to really see it, and I really honestly couldn't see it all that well brand new out of the box. But they have the Marfione dagger logo on there, and it did at one point kind of say like the date of birth and some other stuff on there, but it was so faint. Even when I pulled it out of the box, I could barely see it, and with the tarnish over it, you really can't make it out. But very lightweight. It almost feels plasticky. It almost feels like fake. It's crazy how light it is, which is again great for an EDC knife. Ball bearings, very, very fast action, fairly smooth. It's been, the more I flip it, the smoother it gets. It's a little bit, I wouldn't say gritty by any means. It just, you can feel kind of feel a little bit of a textured, or almost like the surface area around the pivot has a little bit of maybe it wasn't polished in there. I could actually guarantee it wasn't polished in there. If they would have, it would just feel smoother. But it definitely deploys very fast, and it is a smooth action overall. It's just not that buttery, silky smooth feel. You have it's like a matte gray pivot tri hardware there, and then you have, it's really cool how they did that. It just sets in, and then they have, again, this panel of beryllium copper that's the over travel stop for the lock bar. So that way it only goes so far, you can't hyperextend it, and it looks really freaking cool too. So I love that. You have the relief in here, the relief cuts on the back by the flipper area, so that way as you deploy the flipper and you push down, and your finger sinks in, it's just a little bit more comfortable. That's why they put those there when you flip it. As you can see, again, it's not really big, but it fits just perfectly, just big enough for the hand. It doesn't feel cramped in any way. It's very, very, very comfortable. And I really love how minimalist this jimping is. There's just 3 jimping spots right there on the back. And it's perfect. They're very aggressive. And it's really in the sweet spot because it's not a big knife. So if I was going to want to, really reach up and get more control, that's actually exactly where I'd put my thumb or even index finger to cut. So that's great. I love that. I love the looks of this. Very futuristic looking, this hole that's cut out in the blade. And of course, it lightens up the weight of the knife dramatically, which is why you can have such a thick blade stock on the back here, and such a light knife. Of course, the carbon fiber helps. But yeah, it is very, very lightweight. You forget it's in your pocket. Another cool thing is if you wanted, because it's so fancy, if you wanted this to kind of be your gentleman's folder, it's not too big to kind of fit into that realm, that category. But it can, because some of the purists will say, well, it has a pocket clip, so it's not a gentleman's folder. Well, that's another really innovative thing about this design, is it has a hidden pocket clip, which you can kind of see here, but it's flush. And there's a little raised portion right here where you push down, and it's got a spring under there, so you release and it pushes back up, pushing this end down again. And yes, that actually works. That actually works quite well. I was very surprised. And it fits right down into the pocket there. I guess if you might have really abnormally thick jeans or something, then it might not fit as deep into the pocket, but it definitely works. Again, this is titanium on the lock bar, and they used I believe a torch to heat anodize the titanium and give it kind of that tiger pattern. It's really cool. And I don't know if you can really pick it up. It almost looks like oil. It has this orangey sort of copper color in between, and then the stripes have this kind of almost rainbow effect to it on the inside there with some blue, and it just looks freaking awesome. It's, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful and awesome designs I've ever seen on a knife. Absolutely a work of art. But I think I would put it more into the work of art category than a knife, even. And that's why it's not going to stay in my collection, sadly enough. I love the knife, but it's got too much wrong with it fundamentally for me to feel like, yeah, this made sense to keep. If I polished up and got all the tarnish off, and I did put it up on a fireplace mantle with, put it up on display or something, that's cool, but that's just not me. I like to really, use most of my knives, if not all of them, and there's just too much going on that I just don't find practical. And that's the sad part, is because there's so much that is practical. The size, the weight, all of that's really good, but there's just some fundamental things that I really have a problem with. One, the blade is way off center. Way off center. Way off center. It's not touching the inside there, but it's kind of unsettling. So that's not cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, guys. If this was any other knife, or almost any other knife, I would just send in the damn thing myself. But when it's almost $1,900 for a knife, and they can't center the freaking blade. Yeah, that just infuriates me. And I've heard all sorts of horse shit from other people's videos about this, where they say, "Oh, well, it's a flipper, and it's going to loosen up, and it is going to shift." And you know what? that's true. Oftentimes, you flip a knife over and over, especially a flipper, right? You want to fondle it over and over and over, and then it's going to loosen up. But this one was like this, identical to this, since the day I got it. And I flipped the living shit out of it. And kudos to the makers. It has not shifted at all. Not even a little. They must have Loctited this really well, because it has not moved. It has not budged. So I would be singing praises about that, but it started off way off-centered. So if it didn't start off so off-centered, then we'd have no problem. But the fact is the good news is it's not worsening, but it's way off-center. So that's a major attention to detail that just irks me. I don't like it. But that alone is, of course, not a deal breaker for such a spectacular knife. And honestly, I would send this back and say, you know what? I bet you guys can fix that. Fix it. And they would. Because I've seen the newer models some people own or do videos of, or I've even handled. And I think that they're getting some of the kinks worked out, because I saw that most of the blades were centered. I also noticed that the later models are not using the Kaori Y blade steel. Kaori Y blade steel, if you don't know, is forged with Superman's baby tears. And it has, I think, like some unicorn horn mixed into the steel. It's magical. Apparently, it has lightsaber capabilities and can cut through material. It just disintegrates, dematerializes things. So it is supposed to be pretty awesome blade steel. It's some of the better blade steel. It has some pretty impressive properties to it. It is corrosion resistant. It can stain, but it doesn't rust very well. And I hear that it can take Rockwell hardnesses close to 70, which is insanity. And guess what? It's not brittle, it kind of defies physics when you get a steel that hard that's not brittle. So it really is a super steel. It's insane. So I like that, and the newer models are using Elmex, which Elmex is great, don't get me wrong. It's great, especially when you have custom makers properly heat treating it. It can be exceptional, but it's definitely a step down from Kaori Y. And a lot of the finishes that they're doing are just a little less extravagant or detailed. I've seen titanium, just plain titanium on the pocket clip and plain titanium on the lock bar, and it just looks more broken up. It doesn't look as good, not even close. Little things like that. And that's what made me fall in love with this knife, is just the little details that just really make everything pop and make it look so amazing. I'm really glad that I did pick up this version, because I think like their first run, they really went crazy with some of the configurations. The biggest deal breaker, besides it being really dull, I can sharpen that myself. Wow, I'm really rubbing pretty hard on that edge. That's dull. I can sharpen that myself. I would have just sent this back, and been like, hey, will you please just center this for me? And again, I believe they would have. The deal breaker is the lock. Once again, it doesn't matter necessarily how much money you spend on a knife. It is clearly very, very hard for manufacturers to properly get frame locks correct. As skilled as a knife maker can be with so many other aspects, they can completely fail when they're designing, creating, assembling a knife when you consider the lock aspect of it. Frame locks are really hard to do, so it's not trying to bash anyone. They're not easy. I've seen I love zero tolerance knives, but over the years I've learned that you're going to have to really search for one if you really want to use the knife the way it's been marketed, which is overbuilt. You can beat on this thing and it's going to keep on coming, and it's a hard use knife. Well, unfortunately, I would say probably about 80 to 85% of all the zero tolerance knives I've owned, I've sold, because when I try to use them, the locks literally fail on me in so many different ways. So, I search and search because I love their designs. I love, other than their locks, I love their fit and finish, their attention to detail. The materials they use are generally exceptional, and it's worth digging and buying 5 of them, 10 of them, whatever it takes to find one that's actually the way it should be. So it doesn't mean that all of them are going to be bad, but what I can say is that these first couple runs of all of these sigil knives, however you say it, every single one I saw had the same problem I'm about to show you. And this, like I've said in other videos, this isn't a debatable sort of thing. This is a problem. If you plan to cut with your knife, and again, not everybody plans on cutting with this knife, but it is a knife, and if you're going to make one, you should make sure that somebody can use it as it was originally intended. If you were selling this and it was, annotated somewhere for display purposes only, then I would of course never have a problem with this. But if I want to cut, really hard, and I'm, cutting really firmly, and I'm squeezing on this handle very firmly right now. I don't have kung fu grip or anything. I'm just squeezing. And if I'm squeezing really hard and I'm cutting with it, what's going to happen when you're cutting really hard? You're going to put pressure on the handle. That's just natural, right? Well, when I do that with this knife, the lock bar shifts, and I wasn't even really squeezing, really that hard. It was pretty reasonable. It shifts to about 80% lockup. And let me show you just how easy this pushes over. See, it just slides all the way over. And this is what really sucks. If I push a little bit harder here, it pushes all the way over, 100%. So I didn't have to put a lot in there. It really sticks. You have to really force it out. I'm glad they have this over travel stop so I don't ruin anything. But that's a failure of the lock. That's a major problem. I'm not going to get into why. If you don't know why that's a problem, then that's okay. That's fine. You're probably new to knives. Just watch some of my other videos on some of the zero tolerance ones. I explain why that's a major problem. But most people understand that that is a faulty lock, and it didn't take an abnormal amount of force to get that to slide right over. So it's a lemon. This knife is no good. Again, from a display of ingenuity and design and style and beauty and badassery, dear Lord, this knife is stunning. It's just crazy. I love so much about it. But again, that's just the way I work. If the fundamentals aren't squared away, then as exceptional as the knife is, in the end, it sucks. I never thought I could ever feel that way about this knife. This knife is sick. I mean, look at this thing. I'm going to stop fondling it and give it a moment of silence, just in appreciation for how sexy it is. I mean, wow. So anyway, not everybody feels the same way and has the same expectations as I do. But most people I've shown this to are other knife collectors. A couple of them are knife makers, and they were like, "Oh no, are you kidding me? Like, send it back." I'm like, "Nah, it's not worth my time." And the reason why is every time I get a knife that has a problem with a frame lock, it never gets fixed. Never, not once. I don't know if they just they didn't know what they're doing in the first place, so they couldn't fix it, the second time around. And I just don't have it in me, as pansy as this sounds, to go through the disappointment twice. I love this knife so much. I want it out of my face. It's like you're that redheaded stepchild, just, I can't believe, you're such a letdown and you had so much potential. I just can't do it. So, yeah, it's gonna go bye-bye. Now, I did hear that, and I have no idea if this is true. I heard about this probably 6 to 8 months ago. when these were first being released. I heard that they were, I think they even said it was going to be released in Europe or something like that. I don't know. That they were going to do a bigger version of these. Like, I don't know, maybe like a 4-inch blade. I hope to God that's true. I hope they do a knife just freaking like this one. That's bigger. Because I will buy it and see if the lock is correct. And then I will pretty much have like my actual Grail knife, you know, like the knife that is everything this was, everything that this is, and then everything it also isn't. Because, you know, this knife is freaking amazing. But again, it's more of an art piece, in my opinion. This particular knife, anyway. I know there's people out there that have a Sigil that don't have these problems. So, you know, kudos. You know, you're lucky. That's awesome. I'm just not so lucky. So, if I could find one of those big ones, if they actually do something like that and it works, oh my gosh, that's going to be awesome. So anyway, thanks for watching. You know, wipe the drool up. I'm sure that that a lot of you find this to be a beautiful knife like I do. If anybody's interested in buying it, let me know. I already have a couple people looking at it and we're just kind of negotiating price. So if you're interested, feel free to you know, write in the comments or shoot me an email, customedgeworks@gmail.com. And thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate all of your likes, all the subscribers out there. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. And as always, please like, subscribe if you haven't, and give me those comments and the feedback, because I always really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching. Take care.